All right, so you guys are in for a treat today because I have a very special guest. I love doing these creator interviews. I love seeing different artwork, different styles, different writers just come through a piece of artwork and create a beautiful story. But before I say anything else, I want to give a huge shout out to Legion of Comics. Just hit 900 subscribers on YouTube. I believe it was yesterday. Congratulations, Mark. You are killing it lately. Only 100 away from being monetized. That is an absolutely amazing accomplishment. Keep up all the great work, and I know you'll get there very, very quickly. All right, let's go ahead and check out that intro real quick. All right, and here is the man himself, Robby from Rogue Comics. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? It's going good, my man. I have to say, it's nice Sunday evening is what it is.
For sure. It's definitely been a ton of fun getting to know you in the little pre-show that we did.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and for all of my watchers and subscribers who have not met you before, Robby is part of Rogue Comics. He is the creator of the independent comic publisher, Rogue Comics. Let's get right into it. What got you into comics from a young age?
Well, one of my first memories that I can actually care about is, walking to a comic shop at 6 years old. And, you pull off like that first Batman, and then you like hope to one day be like, oh, I wonder if I could ever, write a Batman story or anything like that. But then, you're a kid and you can dream, and what else? Life brings you down a certain road. You think you're doing something when you actually want to do something else. And then you end up picking up a book one day and you start writing into it. That's kind of how Rogue, the whole idea of Rogue Comics started. I literally just started writing comics, and I started talking to people who knew how to make comics, and then I started making comics myself. And I would not look back. It's like the best thing I've ever done.
That's awesome. So when you got your start, you just dove head first. Did it take a little bit, or like, what did you do first, I guess?
Oh, I dove in head first, and it's been a learning process the entire time. It's continuing to be a learning process, and I love that. It's really one of the greatest things I've ever done is that learning process. I love just going from the sharp curve, and at the beginning, I thought I was hot shit. Obviously, I just jumped off a cliff and started making comics. I'm like, look at me, look at me. And then as I start getting into know, hello Alexander, as I start getting to know people and other things of just figuring how the publishing industry works and how everybody needs to get a hold of your item and how the process of you making a comic, because it takes days and days and months before you can even release something onto it. Then you have your editing and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But it's a learning process that I've really really loved. I can go in depth for hours, but basically it just takes a lot of work and a lot of self-belief to getting a comic from concept all the way into print.
So what was the very first comic you ever wrote? Like not just like the very first comic you ever published, but like the first comic that you really put pen to paper and just it started to flow.
The first comic I ever did was this little one-page like manga comic. It was literally 6 panels, and it was called Solus and Luna, and it was along the same lines as Adam and Eternity, with the concept of mythology, and it basically was about 2 Nephilim, one sun, one moon, fighting off their grandfather Lucifer, and it was just like one of those crazy fun things that I was influenced by. Gaiman and Morrison and stuff that I grew up reading and loving. And that was like my first ever comic that I ever did. And I held on to it forever. And I've shown it off like a couple of times, but it literally is just like one TIFF file that's just hanging out around my desk somewhere.
I'm a huge fan of mythology. Thor being one of my favorites.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Like my best man at my wedding has a giant Thor tattoo, like the mythology style Thor. Like it's one of those things that's always kind of spoke to me. And when I was in high school, like I loved mythology. It was just so interesting the way that people used it to kind of try to understand what was going on with the world. And then that it wasn't just like a Greek thing. It wasn't just like a Roman thing. Like it was everywhere. And as you said, like the first one you did was manga. And like there's mythology of all different backgrounds. So to be able to kind of take that and change it and do what you want with it is really interesting and really cool concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Adam and Eternity was crazily influenced by mythology just from the start. I mean, I wanted to take the idea of, when humanity's gone, what's left? We have our ideas and stories. And a lot of people have delved into the question of like what are stories and stuff, but I want to talk about like what were ideas and how could they have like influenced character. So I introduced a character who literally was like this information absorption machine, literally an information sponge, Adam, and I thrust him into a world that was literally just left. Like there was nobody left except, he appears in Athens, walks onto a beach of souls, resurrects somebody from the dead, and then he meets 2 titans from that have been imprisoned for eon. It's like right off the bat, it gets pretty hard hit into mythology. And then it was building parts of my own mythology and then building parts of like stories that have existed, for centuries in human culture, things like that. And then as I'm working on the volume 2, which is, going to come off in the future, we're building our own mythology more onto the current existing mythology that we have already created. And I love it. It's such a fun playground to play in.
For sure. And you said Adam? Was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I got to say the artistry in Adam and Eternity, and then the Adam, A-T, I think it's A-T-T-O-M.
Yeah. And then Adam. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The artwork in this is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like between every punch, even right there where he's just standing there, you can see each little rip in his sleeves. The fact that he made that from scratch, it looks like it's just such a cool style. So who drew this?
So Dom Pinto is my superstar artist. He was actually the first artist I ever brought into Rogue. So he and I worked on Adam and Eternity together. That was literally the first 6 pages. When he turned those into me, I knew that was I was I'm working with this guy forever. This guy's amazing. I love this man. He's a genuinely awesome human being, crazy influence, creative. He has this beautiful balance of American paneling, American comic style paneling, with like the manga storytelling. It's like
Okay.
incredible. And so I love how he was able to make like a really more philosophical, not so hero's journey, but also like the hero's journey of Adam, exciting with his dynamic storytelling. And then we did A Hell of Our Own, which we're still working on right now. We're actually currently working on chapter two. Chapter two is 65 pages, so it's going to take a while. And then some life things come up. And that's the samurai tale with like absolute just full dynamic thrust into the underworld. It's super fun. And Adam was like this super great little short story we wanted to do, like the fun just like multiverse of Adam and Eternity that we created. And it's also a talent showcase to show off just how excellent Dom is at telling a story.
Very cool. So Steve says, I think that's why it's difficult for Hollywood to accurately bring over some Japanese horror. It's both social and historical.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is so true. It's such an interesting dynamic that we see in Japanese horror compared to American horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of horror movies, horror TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
I like the ideas. I like the concepts. There's some that I can get behind, some that I can get into.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time I find them funny because they're so like out there. I'm like, come on, really? That's what you're choosing to do right now? And I'm like, yeah, like Paranormal Activity was one of the first ones I watched as an adult because it came out right when I was in college. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I haven't given horror movies a true shot in a while. And I watched it and I was just laughing the whole time. I'm like, what the hell? And my buddy, who I was talking about before, my best man, actually was sitting next to me. And the whole time he's like making little comments and whatnot. They actually stopped the movie because so many people were laughing at the little comments he was making. They stopped the movie midstream and just like said, this is supposed to be scary. Please stop. I don't know who it is, but you need to stop because this is not how this should be shown. And he like stopped for a little bit and then kind of went back to it, but kept it quieter. So our whole row was like giggling, trying to hold it in. It was one of the best movie experiences ever. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I think that was one of the things that turned me off to horror was that I could find the funniness of it. I could find like the little things in it. And then with horror comics, I'm actually kind of getting more captured by them and more of like those thriller storylines of they're not a true superhero storyline. So I'd love to hear your take on that. Like, what got you into like the horror storyline? Because you were mentioning the anthology character you did.
Yeah. So for one of my books, both like anthology, my third novel, Streets Run Red, things like that. I love diving into horror, especially like existential and like individualism horror.
Okay.
I love diving into like the soul, like the soul searching horror of like, am I a good man? Am I a good person? Have I done good things in my life? Have I earned good things? And just in general, exposing the truth. Can sometimes lead to the biggest horrors. I mean, just look at anything that's ever been covered up in history and exposing it, how terrifying that is. And so with like anthology, I created it originally as a comic book. Didn't have an artist at the time, so I turned it into short stories, prose short stories. And then down the line, as I was creating Mr. Jacket, it was like perfect character who was obsessed with just the cold hard truth. And the tagline of anthology is "May the truth set you free," and I love that question because it's like, does it always set you free, or is it sometimes the most damning thing ever? So I makes 11 twisted tales of how this one man goes throughout life, just hunting these like weird truths about people, and it's really grounded and it's based around just like my own fears about people and people who've told their own fears to me. And that was like one of the things I love exploring into because it's like deep and it's rooty and it's something that's like in us all primal. So it's something we can all relate to rather than just like, zombies punching through a wall or, aliens coming down that are actually insane. And then like The Streets Ran Red was like this crime noir that started about like the depravity of man that turned into like a supernatural thriller. And so like things like that I get to have fun around and play with. Horror has it has such a wide range because you even have like comedy horror nowadays. And our most recent talent showcase, Infinity, has actually a preview of a longer term horror project I'm working on with this lovely artist JJ Zalowski called To Maggie. And basically the six preview pages I show in the final pages of Infinity are like a kind of a slow burn taste of like what you're gonna be getting with like some of the stuff that Rogue has coming along the way.
Very cool. So you're the writer of the team. Are there any other writers that you write with, or do you kind
Uh,
of come up with the stories on your own?
I originally had a writing partner when I was beginning developing Rogue. Some life things happened, and we had to go. He had to just take time off. He didn't.
Yeah.
He's still a company. He just had to take time off for then. So then I was left with like full creative development. So the projects that he and I had co-wrote, we put on the back burner. I had Adam and turned me on the role. That's how it started. And then I realized, obviously, we can't just have one thing going. So then I was like in full artist recruitment mode. Marketing mode, publishing mode, editing mode, and I ended up falling in love with the whole process of doing everything. And so I'm the lead creative writer right now. I'm actually
Okay.
talking to 3 writers right now to bring into the Rogue family, and like utilizing their artists and our artists, and we're gonna start building a really really cool publishing house with the idea. All creator owned. It's just the best way to do. There's no other
Yeah.
way to do it. I want, if I'm not buying your project off of you, you're just going to have it as a shell. And that's the best way to do it. Creative shell
That's
is
awesome.
the game is supposed to be. So everything like that. Even one of my younger artists who I've recently brought on, who are working on a project called Will Pfeiffer, the Graceless Ferret. It's to be expected at the end of this fall. He and I were talking a couple of days about him doing backup stories, him writing backup stories for our character that he created, and I do the main story. And I was like, I'm all for it. Like, let's totally do this.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool things. I'm all for sharing. I'm all for building worlds. And Rogue is a perfect platform for a lot of artists to come on and like let's talk.
I got to say, I love that the first thing you said was, I'm going to bring them to the Rogue family. Like, this is a family to you.
Yeah, they're
Like,
everybody's close here. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I try to be uh less boss, more homie. I just try to be more of a friend to them, as like we're making comics together. We're having a fun time doing it, and we're also doing it to get exposure, to get our stories out there. And I think these are stories that people read and they're gonna enjoy, and it's comics. Who doesn't love making them? So.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the writing process alone for a comic has to be one of the most creative ways to write anything. Like, for someone to take a story and say, I'm going to put this dialogue right here, I'm going to leave this just artwork, I'm going to leave this dialogue here, and I'm just going to let different things tell the story. Like I was telling you in the pre-show, I did a little bit with creative writing in college, and it was just so interesting because like you could just get everything down on paper. As long as it flowed, it could make sense. But when it comes to doing a comic, it's a lot different from storyboarding, and it's a lot different from just writing on paper, because you have to like allow some of the pictures to tell the story, but sometimes you can't just let the pictures tell the story. You got to kind of flow it into the dialogue, and then you might have like the background talk, and it's such an interesting style of writing. So for you, what's the hardest part about all of that? Is it getting it together? Like, what do you feel like comes not as naturally as everything else?
A lot of the natural storytelling elements, I'm lucky to say, come to me. The twists and turns of how a plot's going to work, how a character is going to turn, how to build big mysteries. I've been lucky enough to read a lot of books, both novels, comic books, everything. Know how the whole dynamics work. I have very dynamic scripts where I load a lot. It's like part Alan Moore, part Grant Morrison, part just basic script dialogue. So I play around with a lot of techniques with
Yeah.
storytelling. But the hardest part sometimes is definitely the characters, making sure voices are consistent across your entire story. Being true to like who they are, not just not just taking a left where you should be taking a right. Short little things like that. Consistency is definitely a big thing across the board with a lot of my characters. I like them, you know, being hard grained, but also being able to change, but not change too much, because that's kind of the best thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it depends. It depends on the day too, because like today I was able to write about 12 pages of a setting script, but
Okay.
none of the dialogue was coming to me today. So I go ahead, you just, you know, leave it, save it, close it up for a while, move on to something else. I picked up a book instead because, you know, I've just been fried the last couple of days just working. So I was just like, all right, I'll put it away. I'll go read a book, let my mind relax, that kind of thing.
For
But no,
sure.
it depends every day. Um, and you have to be, I write every day. I treat it like a job. I write every day. I write before I go to bed. I write in the morning. If I can, I write in the afternoon. A lot of the afternoon, I take time to read as well, because reading is just as important as writing. Uh, and
Oh yeah.
it's a whole process, and it's different for everybody. I've had to change it so much, but I just know a couple things. Just read and just write. That's just the basic rule.
So as a writer, I'm sure you have like that idol writer from
I do.
comics or wherever. For me, when I was doing a lot of like story writing and um, stuff like that, it was F. Scott Fitzgerald. Like Great Gatsby just spoke to me. I started picking up a lot of his short stories. For you, who do you kind of look to when you need that creative outlet to just like let your mind wander and read something?
So the first actual like book I can physically remember ever holding in my hands and reading um was JLA Volume 2 by Grant Morrison. So I was
Okay.
immediately thrust into like this crazy high concept world of this absolutely insane magic man. And then like after that I started reading books, and I was dabbling in both comics and books, and I've always been a reader since I was like, you know, second grade. So,
Yeah.
and I was reading above my level and trying to read higher things. You know, I started falling in love with like Aldous Huxley, J.D. Salinger, Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald. I literally started out Mary Shelley, Lord Byron. You know, I was reading so much and in such a short time that I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. But the one artist I always went back to was Morrison, because he had to set this like hopeful tone and how he wanted to create everything, but he also threw ultimate evil at ultimate good. And I love how he was so ingrained in his archetypes, but yet were able to surprise us with like his sheer scope and scale. It was one of those things that I always like I admired so much. And just I love the comic talk as well. You know, when I read a comic book, and like when I read one of Bendis's comics, it's all dialogue, it's consistent, it's very human, it's like it's how
Yeah.
people like now. But you know, sometimes I want to read a comic that's out of this world. So I want language that's not going to be like, wait, what? This isn't that human, and like, you know, more inquisitive, or like weirder, like analytics, and just way sentences are structured. I love doing that stuff too. So
You got to play around with it,
yeah,
and I totally get that. It's one of those things where sometimes this works for this and sometimes this works for this, and then like different things that worked with, let's say, Adam and Eternity might
yeah,
not work with Hell of Our Own,
hmm
because they could be the same genre, they could be the same style, but at the same time you're now working with a whole new set of characters. And even though it worked, you got to kind of think, okay, what element worked that I can pull, but also not just redo the storyline with new characters. And
hmm
I feel like that's got to be one of the hardest parts, because you said that you're working with a team, I think, of 6 people, including yourself, and you're working on 7 ongoing stories right now.
yeah. I got six. We're doing six short projects and then one longer ongoing. That like
Okay.
has is literally so top secret. Like it's only between me and him. So it's yeah. I got a lot of things going on, but that's like the best part about it.
Yeah.
hmm hmm
I mean,
Yeah. So yeah.
here's your creative team,
I love
and
it.
I
I love
mean,
it.
so from start to finish,
Mhm.
how, like, what about your creative team
And I have to
just
say, I forgot adding Vanessa Fantinati. She's the
okay.
artist of Breathe and the Siblings, and her and I are working on a larger project called The Canals. We're currently in development right now. And she is a talent to behold, man. Like, her European storytelling is something to fall in love with. Both Siblings and Breathe are some of my favorite pieces I've ever written, and she
Siblings
brings
was cool.
she brings this like just this beautiful indie, like nonfiction-esque, like realism to it that I absolutely just love. And I can give her very human stories with very human characters, and she makes one hell of a piece. So Vanessa's also on there on top of Dom, Isaac, and Charles, and Jake.
Very cool. So apparently Alex wants me to join the Rogue family. I don't know if I could write a comic book yet.
Hey,
I have
well,
some cool stories, but
bringing into prose piece right now. I'm actually talking to a fellow writer and comic writer. He did a Kickstarter called Programmed. I met him a couple weeks ago, and he has a lot of prose pieces, because finding partners for a lot of comic projects is hard, especially nowadays. It's about believing in people, also believing in yourself to get a project off the ground. But at Rogue, we're gonna start. A lot of our black pages between stories are like story introductions and just like the credit pages. And we have this awesome creative idea. Why don't we put like single page prose pieces between comics, and people can choose to read them if they want. We'll keep improving the comic medium. The comics we sell are premium products. They're beautiful paperback books, rather than just the staple bound papers. We want it to be really just premium quality, and we want to keep adding like this Rogue dynamic to what we're making. So we're thinking about bringing in one-page prose pieces between comic stories to see, what everybody's liking. It's like, oh, what
that's
about
awesome.
this one idea that's prose? Can we adapt this into a comic? Things like that. So we're trying to expand and trying to bring storytelling to everybody that everybody would like.
Yeah. And that's one of the coolest things. Like, so we were talking about like Free Comic Book Day, was just a week ago now. And that it really is all about comics for everyone. Like, I walked in there and I walked out of there with a comic for my daughter,
Awesome.
2 comics for my son, one that he ripped almost immediately when he opened it.
Cool.
My wife walked out with 2 comics that she fell in love with right away. And I walked out with 2 comics of my own. And then I went to the Syracuse Mall this weekend, and there was a little comic shop in there. And I'm like, oh, I got to see what they have. So I ended up picking up a whole other Free Comic Book Day comic that wasn't at my local comic shop.
Awesome.
So it was perfect. It was like one of those things where it really is for everyone. And when my buddy first got into comics, he's like, well, I'm not really a fan of superheroes. And I'm like, that's great, because I read some superhero stuff. And then there's like this whole other shelf that's like 5 times as long at my local comic shop of just indie comics. That's anything from like horror to like Department of Truth.
Fantasy,
mystery, like
crime, drama, nonfiction. I mean, whatever you want.
Exactly.
Mythology. I mean, there's so much that there literally is something for everyone. I mean, my LCS, Nuclear Comics in Laguna Hills, literally one of the biggest graphic novel collections you can come in. I mean, people walk in the store and it's like a library. And like I'm lucky, I'm fortunate enough to like own a library myself. I mean, this is literally just one shelf of 2 other giant ones the same size along the other wall. Plus how many ever short boxes and long boxes you own as well.
not including this over here and on the other side.
Yeah. But you love it. You love reading these different voices, and you love reading those stories. Like we're talking about just getting burned out on certain storylines, and that's the beauty of comics. You can just go to your shop, or a lot of people shop online too. You can hop on a Comixology. You got Substack now. I mean, there's so many ways to get a hold of comics. But the best thing is, and nothing will ever beat this, is going into any comic shop, and picking up a nice book in your hand and flipping through it, finding something you never saw before because like the cover caught you, or you saw like the side binding that was like, oh, that's a cool logo or a cool name, simple things like that. Yeah, I've always loved that. And the indie section was always the best. Indie section always has the greatest like looking books as well.
Oh yeah, the covers in the indie section, because they don't have this gigantic team of people saying no. They just
Yeah,
have a bunch of people who are willing to say yes to them. And like the covers on one of the ones that I've been reading, Geiger, has just
oh
been
yeah, dude.
phenomenal.
Jeff and
Like
Gary. Mm-hmm.
that was one of the ones that I picked up the other day
So
in Syracuse.
have you ever read like any Jeff Johns, Gary Frank stuff? Like
No,
his Superman run or anything? Okay.
I'm not a Superman fan.
Oh, okay. Well, if you enjoy Gary Frank's art, I highly recommend him and J. Michael Straczynski's Midnight Nation. It's an old
Okay.
Tolkien book. It's about J. Michael Straczynski's story he created after he was nearly beaten to death on the streets in San Diego.
Oh wow.
And it's one of my favorite, like most heartfelt. It's kind of parts Catcher in the Rye, part Traveler Across America, part like Invisible Highway. It's a lot of weird and cool things, and Gary Frank's art till this day looks just as good now as it did then. Yeah, so I highly recommend.
Steve, Geiger is a book to read.
Yeah, it is a good.
Last month, I want to say, I did a 3-issue review of what I thought of just the first 3 issues. They're on issue 5 right now. I think 6 comes out at the end of this month or next month. It's phenomenal. It's like nothing I've ever read before. And it's just one of those books that captures you from minute one, and it doesn't reveal everything to you at the start. And that's what I like. When I was talking to Kevin Delgado from, he's the one that created Tough Stuff. He was the last person I did a creator interview with. I like something that has a twist that you just don't see coming. And when I was reading Robby's stuff too, there was just this element of that where it was like, there's things where even the main characters at the beginning have no idea what they're walking into. Like Adam and Eternity, as I'm reading the start of that, I think it's like the first 3 to 5 pages. There's no dialogue. It's just him kind of being created and trying to find his way. And it's, I think I've got it right here. The first thing that he ever says is, "Can you tell me what happened here?" And it's like, hold on a second. You're starting off like at the same way that this main character is. They have no idea what's going on, and you have no idea what's going on. And it's like, let's find out together. I need to know more.
Yeah, that was the exact vision. That was the exact thinking I went through my head. I'm literally like, newborn creation. If it could talk, what would it say? It would look at the world and ask what would happen. You know, what happened here? And you know, I added a bit of politeness to it. Excuse me, you know, because you know, when I was talking with Dom and talking with Jake, this panel was so important too, because not only did it introduce Ophelia, our co-protagonist, but also just the whole scale and scheme of the book. You know, so we wanted to immediately recognize that, hey, this Adam creation is different from anything that's ever happened before. So like you see Ophelia, how she's not a full ghost. And then you find out there's like roots into her story that are going to be answered in the future, but you kind of find out who she is at the end, based on Adam's own learning. And the first 6 pages are so fun because that's what you bring an audience in with. So that first page, when you ask, "Who am I?" to just silent, just like mind shattering, you know, universe bending stuff to this grounded question. I love it. It was one of the most fun things I've ever done, and I'm so proud of that work. Yeah, a lot of work went into those first couple pages.
And like the artwork here, I mean, someone might say like, "Oh, that's really simple," but it's not. Like, there's so much detail. Every little brick in the background is completely done on top. You can see like every little bit of these characters who are just walking around, like you said, as ghosts. And then when you finally get to meet this co-protagonist, you said Ophelia. That's how you pronounce it. Okay, so Ophelia, like her eyes say so much, and she hasn't even spoken a word yet. Like you can see who this character is through the way that she's been drawn, and the way that she's holding herself, the way that she's holding her necklace. Like every little piece of it is just truly groundbreaking and amazing in the way that it was done with this panel, and the fact that she stands out outside of her panel is something that is, you don't always see that. You don't always see these characters that pop out at you like that are larger than life, a 3D on a 2D image. And it means something more when you see these amazing, well-drawn and well-developed characters, as you said, within the first 6 pages.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's such a fun thing to do, especially when you see when Dom first turned in those first black and whites. It was just those simple black lines on top of the white. And then you have Jake come into the team, and he brings this like amazing color palette. I was like, we're blending apocalypse with psychedelic, and just like, these things are ethereal ideas. So you got to make them look both like heavenly and also just nothing like we've ever seen before. And mixing Dom's insanely creative talent with Jake's color scheme really brings out the entire world, and it's so beautiful to see.
For sure. I see a lot of questions in the comments. We will get to them.
Throw them at me anytime. I'm ready.
So the first one I saw, I got to back up a little bit. Is it available online? So you were saying that a lot of this is like paperback and stuff?
Yeah, so it's available. I'm a big fan of both platforms, both digital and physical. I travel a lot, and I need both books on the go and with me. So Comixology is an awesome platform. All our Rogue Comic books are on Comixology. You can go to roguecomics.com. Under the About Us tab, there's under the Comixology tab, there's like the link that'll go to our Rogue Comics library. You can type in our name under Comixology, Rogue Comics with an X at the end. You'll go to our publisher, Adam and Eternity Volume 1. All the single issues, all the Rogue Comics Presents issues, a digital first series called Tales of Your Destruction, and A Hell of Our Own Chapter 1 are all on Comixology. And then all of them are also available in print via Amazon's KDP. So you can go on Amazon.com, type in Adam and Eternity Volume 1. It'll come up with a trade paperback. We have 2 editions. We have a black and white noir edition, which is meant for affordability and library library distribution. So I want all kids to read. So this book is like it's so for going to distribution and library, and then you have the full premium one, which is a $19.99 book in physical print, along with all our single issue comics. So here's a physical of Adam, beautiful trade paperback, available through Amazon, international, anywhere, Amazon England, Germany, France, US,
awesome.
everywhere. First issue of A Hell of Our Own, signed book, nice paperback, great 45-page book for $5. Yes. Siblings, $4. This guy is also paperback, 32-page. And then our most recent talent showcase, Infinity, as well. So everything available, physical, digital, big opportunities on both platforms. I love it. Share it for everybody. And then hopefully by the end of the month, Comixology will approve our Comixology Unlimited and Adam and Eternity Volume 1, along with A Hell of Our Own Chapter 1 and Siblings and Infinity will be on Comixology Unlimited.
So a 45-page comic for $5 on Amazon? Is that what I just heard?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, I believe in charging, like, if it's a 30-page book, it should be no more than $4. If it's a 40-page book, it should be $5. It's things that I believe in proper pricing. All my digital comics too are probably 65 to 80% off the physical price for the digital, because it should be like that. It shouldn't be paying what you're paying for paperback. And I completely believe in that. It's what my comic company stands for. I want everyone to read. I don't want it to be this crazy expensive thing that nobody can afford.
Yeah. So with all that being said, what do you enjoy reading? Now, for me, real quick, I completely agree with that statement, because I absolutely cannot stand when I walk into my LCS and I see DC asking me to pay $1 more for the same exact comic because there's a variant cover.
Yeah.
I'm like, Marvel doesn't do that. And
Yeah.
my LCS is like, Marvel might move toward that. And I'm like, and while I understand you want to support that artist, is $1 a book really making that much of a difference on
So
their bottom end?
the cardstock, right? Like, so they
Yeah.
make it a difference. Like, this is cardstock and like this is regular printing, right?
Yeah.
And with like our publishing, our books, you know, we gave you a paperback. We gave you something that can't bend. Like,
Yeah.
I can't fold this in half. It's like, this is going to last you on your shelf if you want. Like, this is like the prestige format Black Label
Yeah.
books that are $6, $8. And, you know, I was able to take that formula and charge way less. And I want to give people books that are going to last rather than like this
And
piece of paper that's going to unfold in half, or pay $5 for literally 20 pages. I don't know. I don't know. It's a crazy thing.
this is a bad example because I thought I paid $3 for it, but it actually is a
It was
$5 book.
yeah, it was a $5 book.
But yeah, there's got to be one in here that's like $2.99.
No, that is
Obviously not Spawn verse.
Spawn is the only $2.99 book I'm pretty sure
Yes.
like that exists. I think I think Savage Dragon even went up. Yeah, still only
$2.99.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, these aren't just like that cardstock paper. They're dense. I mean, they are kind of cardstock, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have to say a paperback book holds up so nicely. And my wife, I swear to God, she walks into a store and sees DC Black Label Harley Quinn.
Oh yeah, man. Dude, those I love those magazine books. And then I want to answer one of your guest questions. What do I enjoy
Yeah, go ahead.
reading? Well, I enjoy sci-fi and fantasy probably the most. Especially like sci-fi horror and fantasy horror. I'm not really big RPG player like Dungeons and Dragons, but I love big fantasy worlds. So I just finished reading like Philip Kennedy Johnson's The Last God. That's something I really love. I love reading a lot of like the Humanoids Press stuff that is like it's all mythology and like really dense like classic stories that are just rewritten for like modern storytelling.
Wow.
Obviously, I've been
Awesome.
been a big DC guy my entire life. Have recently gone to Marvel, but a lot more modern Marvel. I can't really read anything before like 85. It's kind of hard because the art just doesn't speak to me the same as it does in modern
Oh, for
day.
sure.
But I have to say, I love like probably the Wildstorm universe after Jim Lee kind of like exited it out when it was like
Yeah.
Warren Ellis and Ed Brubaker. And then anything Image. I love Image. I have pretty much the entire like Image library. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Image and Aftershock lately. We Live was phenomenal. I'm actually scheduling an interview with Inaki Miranda right now.
Fantastic. They're fantastic.
And yeah, 100%. And like their writing style, like you said, pretty much all of the writers at Image Comics right now are doing phenomenal. Out of Body is one that I want to get into more. I've started to read it, but
Peter Milligan has been around a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
You ever read Shade the Changing Man?
No, I have not.
So it's about this poet, this mad poet who is abducted by aliens who imbue him with like this cloak that basically like, creates emotion, like manifestations of emotion around him, and he's like insane. And it's like poetic and crazy psychedelic. And Peter Milligan is a dense writer, and it's one of his like greatest works. I really love it. And then a short 3-issue mini called Girl with Duncan Fegredo. That is, I think actually DC Black Label reprinted it lately because it was like an old Vertigo thing. But you know, Peter Milligan has some really good stuff. His American Ronin too was really good at AWA Studios.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that was him.
Yeah,
so it's one of my things. Is like I'm newer to comics, so I don't always read to a writer. There's times I'll be like, okay, yeah, I know that guy. I'm going to pick it up because I've been reading his other stuff, like Donny Cates. One of the biggest reasons I picked up the current Thor run is because he was writing Venom, and I was just absolutely loving Venom at the time. The
Jason Aaron's Thor run.
Yes,
Okay.
I picked his up too because that was really good. There's Nick Spencer. When he started writing Amazing Spider-Man, I was like, okay, I've heard of him. I didn't actually read anything of his before that, but I had heard that he'd been doing really well. There's times where I'm like, okay, not really a fan of what he's doing with Spider-Man, but I feel like it's got to be going somewhere. So I'm hoping for the best, especially with like him leaving soon. But Ryan Otley was a huge reason why I started picking that up because I loved his artwork. But yeah, it's one of those things where when certain artists or certain writers are on a project, I'll start picking up. I had heard so much about Jeff Johns, and it seemed like what was going on with Geiger could be so cool as a TV show. I'm like, okay, I gotta see this. I gotta know what it's all about because this is absolutely amazing. Like it truly played almost like a TV show in my head as I'm reading it. And if
Jeff
it can
was the
capture me
best.
that way, yeah. When it can
His
capture me that way, I
cinematic-
want to continue to read it.
Yeah, Jeff's cinematic storytelling is second to none. I mean, his Green Lantern run is the greatest Green Lantern run ever written. His Superman stories are fantastic. Everything he's
Yeah.
touched at DC, his JSA is legendary. And I love
I've
how
heard
he's
so much about his Superman and Green Lantern that I need, as much as I don't like Superman, and my wife would probably kill me if I picked a Superman book up while she's there with me. Because she's like, okay, he's so overpowered. Nothing can kill him. Nothing can destroy him. I'm just tired of hearing about him. I'm like, I get it.
I'll tell you. So I wasn't a Superman fan growing up either. And then, like I told you, I discovered Grant Morrison. And one of the first Superman books I ever read was All-Star Superman. And All-Star Superman basically in 12 chapters breaks down why Superman is the best superhero ever. And it's not just like, it's not just that simple question. It's basically why is Superman the best human ever? Because he's more human than us. And Grant had studied that archetype for so long. I mean, I have the Absolute Edition, and there's like these crazy, like in-depth interviews of how Grant got into the head of like how Superman thinks. And I started gaining so much respect for the character and the idea of Superman. And that actually fuels a lot of like that hopeful drive I use in my writing. Because it's always about trying to be the better person, the better man. How can I make the world better around me? How can I make the people around me better? And the Superman represents that to me. So I've really grown to like Superman, having not liked him growing up at all.
Okay, good to know. I'm have to go pick that up. And I love Green Lantern, so Jeff Johns writing Green Lantern. I got to go find that.
I think they have. They're like, because I have them all in like their old paperbacks.
Okay.
But they have like these big books now. I think they have like book 1 through 4, which is like the first. It's almost up to Blackest Night, so that's like 40 issues of Green Lantern already on top of Green Lantern Rebirth and stuff. And then, I see Steve has a question.
No, go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then we can get into his question.
It's just available in 4 books now, and then you have Blackest Night after that, which is like one of the greatest events ever.
Good to know. So he was asking, do you go from one project to another on the same day, or do you take a break? So like going off of all the writers kind of being on different projects at the same time, what do you like to do?
I definitely bounce between a couple projects a day. I'm currently writing 2 comic scripts at the moment for 2 projects that we're shooting for launching in the fall, at the end of the fall, like October and November, finishing up their issue 2 scripts. And then I'm finishing up 2 novels, my 4th and 5th like poetry. Sorry, not my 4th and 5th. One's a poetry book, one's a novel, for my publisher. So I have a few things that I'm dabbling in at the moment.
Very cool. Sorry, I'm listening to you as I'm looking through all these other ones.
I know how it is.
Hoarder's Hide, you're asking who is the artist. Let me know what book you're talking about so we can talk more about it. But I do have to say, when I was reading Siblings, talking about Vanessa as the artist of that, that was just such a well-drawn, interesting story, to say the least. I mean, there was a very cool vibe. As I was reading, I'm like, okay, this is exactly how siblings interact. I'm like, I'm reading it, and it's literally bringing me back to my wife and her brother. Like, if this was going on in their life, how would they respond? And it played out exactly the way that it should. And to the point where it feels real. Like it's almost like a story that happened, but at the same time is done to a point where you can kind of throw in a twist there, because, and I'm not going to give anything away, I don't want to do spoilers or anything, but it's such a cool read, and the artistry just goes along with it so well because it feels real as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Siblings was, I was writing it one night. It was this past December, and it was around Christmas time, so I was a little bit, I feel like everybody's a little bit more emotional around Christmas time, and I was just thinking about my siblings in the future and like how we get along as the years go on. And so I just opened up my journal and I started writing and just dialogue between a brother and a sister. So I have two younger siblings, a younger brother, younger sister. So I kind of combined the three of us and mixed up the two characters I created and put those two out. So it was just an amalgamation of how we all talk with another and how we help each other get through life, and how at different moments we're still the same at our core. And I love Vanessa's seamless transition. How when we were developing it, we were talking about, we had all this dialogue with like very limited direction, and I was like, I want this spread out over like a full issue. And I'm like, let's work this out. Let's see how many panels we can put in. Let's see what we can change to make this as emotionally and heartwarming, as emotionally gripping, as heartwarming as possible. And I love how we executed that perfectly. Everybody I've given siblings to, whether they're a comic reader or like a book reader, or they've never even touched a comic in their life, they picked it up and they're like, oh my gosh, this is actually, I really like this. And I can't like promote enough like how much I love that book, because that book has every bit of heart and love I have ever had for anybody I've ever met or been in contact with. Like Adam and Eternity is like my philosophical mythology, crazy out there, like how the world would be if I was nuts about it. And then Siblings is how the world actually is.
For sure. So going off of that, Steve has another question. Is Blackjack 22 a second book of poetry?
So Blackjack 22 is my first published book I've ever had. It was actually the first piece I ever got published. And Blackjack 22 is a poetry collection. And then the second poetry collection I'm working on is going to be Blackjack's sequel. And I can tell you the book is going to be called Hours. And it's going to be a love story.
Very cool. What is your favorite genre to write? Like, what do you just dive into and it flows perfectly, I guess is the best way to put it.
Epic storytelling definitely flows. Like narrative voice, I can tell. Third person narration, I love. Something that's existed. And that's out there. Like, I love when a Thor book opens and lo, it's like, oh, this is like telling from a classic book. That flows out of me. Argumentative dialogue flows out of me quite well. And then a lot of finishing.
What does it say about you as a person?
Right? And then a lot of finishing sentences. I have some finishers that every time that when I'm like writing or typing, and it'll like just a conscious stream of thought, and it comes, and then the sentence ends, and I thought it was going to keep going, but it was I'm like, all right, that's it. That's all I need to say on this page for the ending. Like, I love ending issues, not with like an explosion or a crazy punch, but something that's going to be like with like a word, like, oh shit, this is coming into the next chapter. Or this is the end. Like, did you have the chance to finish Adam and Eternity?
No, I did not yet.
Okay. All right. So next time we talk, when we talk about that ending, because I use a question instead of an actual statement, because that's the way the book is supposed to be. So you find out ways to write and end things and begin things. So it began with a question and it always ends with a question. It's a circle.
That's cool.
If it begins with an answer, it ends with an answer. And so like little things like that you can have fun time with.
And see, I'm a huge fan of what Marvel's doing right now. So I love something that finishes and then has no ending. Because it's like Loki finished, and I'm like, but there's so many more questions. Why are we stopping here?
Mm-hmm.
Same with like WandaVision. Same with like Geiger issue 3 was
Yeah.
that big thing that like was you can't leave off on that note. Like stop. You need to like I honestly wanted like pages just kind of like fly into the book and like tell me more because I didn't want to wait for issue 4. And I love stuff like that where it ends in the best way possible, but it doesn't have a true ending because it leaves something open. And it's just so amazing to watch that creative process and to like imagine that creative process as you're reading a book. And it's an interesting style to be able to start with something like that and then also end with it, because then you really dive into that it's a story that's evolving and a character that's evolving and even a villain that's evolving. So with that being said, like as we were talking about in the pre-show,
Mm-hmm.
you said you enjoy writing villains. Why is that?
I've always been attracted to the dark. I guess it is, right? I'm very in tune with how I am as a person, and I know a lot of like the weirder things you think about of just like people, walking
Yeah.
every day, the way you're thinking in your head, what you see. And villains, I feel like see the world for how it is, and the ugliness is what drives them to be, evil, or what we
Yeah.
consider to be evil. At least, they have the sense that we need to fix the world, so this is what needs to be done at the extreme measure. And then you have like different versions of evil. I mean, you have like Doctor Doom evil, and then you have like Dark Side evil, then you have like Thanos evil.
Yep.
It's like these different types of evils that you can have fun playing with. And then they also drive the hero that asks questions. So like right now I'm working with this antagonist that is like developed over like 30 years of story in my own story. And like like
Okay.
there's a 30-year gap between the plot, the A and B plot, but it's still the same villain, and he's messing around with two of the same, it's legacy heroes, let's put it that way. And the evil characters are just so fun to play with because they're consistent. They're unwavering in their morality and ethics, and they
Yeah.
will do anything to get the job done. And I love how they're so relentless. And I love books sometimes that end with the hero losing.
Oh,
uh
for sure.
that's definitely some fun. Mhm.
That was one of the coolest parts about Infinity War, watching that unfold.
Oh, I love,
And it's
dude,
like,
fantastic.
yeah,
I was pleased, and I was so also like shocked because I was like, now what's next?"
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always tell people, have you been a fan of like, have you read any of the DC Crises, like Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis?
Pieces of it. I've never been able to pick up full runs of it just because,
Mhm.
like I said, I'm new to this.
Yeah, yeah.
I've only been into collecting comics
Mhm.
for about 5 or 6 years now, and then actually reading comics. I've only been um, reading them since probably about 2018, so 3 or 4 years. Um, so as I said, like this is newer to me than a lot of other people, but I
Mhm.
have been like into comics since I was a kid, like the
Yeah.
shows and all of that. But the source material, I really didn't dive into until I was like, you know what? I'm tired of watching these movies, DC, Marvel, or anything else, and not really understanding these characters on the deep level that I really should. So that's why
Mhm.
I dove into the books, like I said, right around 2017, 2018.
Mhm.
And it was just amazing. It was so much fun. So yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to read more about it. Like I've also been told like I need to read like I think it's Kingdom Bound or Kingdom Come, that
Kingdom
version
Come,
of Superman.
Mark
Yeah,
Alex Ross. Mhm.
yeah. Like I need to read that because that is a really good Superman storyline that I might actually enjoy. But no, I've never really dove into like the complete collection of Crisis on Infinite Earths or anything like that.
Mhm. So Final Crisis is my favorite Crisis, partially because Grant Morrison, J.G. Jones, and Doug Mankey dice the whole stratagem of Final Crisis is ultimate good versus ultimate evil. Like
Okay.
ultimate evil wins, and when ultimate evil wins, what does ultimate good do? And like it's like the ultimate question right there, and it's like answered so perfectly because it develops across universes. And Grant tells a story that's affecting not only like the main DC Earth, but all the other Earths around it. And it's like, you know, like that kind of storytelling I aspire to. And then when I go look at writers like Hickman, who like literally builds worlds in pages. Like, have you been reading any of the new X-Men, like the House of X, Powers of X era?
No, I haven't. Okay. I've been told to stay away from them.
It's definitely dense. It's crazy. It's literally a playground for writers. Like, it's definitely a playground for writers, not necessarily it's enthusiasts for fans. I mean, it's nothing like Thor, Venom, or the soon-to-be Hulk by Donnie. You know, it's very different. But I love that kind of stuff. But then I also love, you know, jumping into. I mean, the first volume of Thor: The Devourer King was like fantastic. Yeah. Coming off of King Thor by Aaron and Ribic, which, I mean, and then Aaron's run is just the all-time greatest Thor run in my book. Nothing can beat it. Then I'd say J. Michael Straczynski, and then, you know, we can get to talk. Then probably Walter Simonson, but Donnie's making his way up. I believe in Donnie. I think he's gonna do a good Hulk run too. I hope he does.
I'm hoping.
It's got.
I'm a huge fan of Donnie.
I mean, we're talking Ryan Otley on Hulk, man. Like, that's it's Invincible. We're getting Invincible, so like I'm okay with this.
For sure.
What do you think of Nick Klein on Thor?
I think it's going to be interesting. I'm definitely a fan of his writing. And just like I said, like I didn't know a lot of the stuff that I was reading at the time was Nick Klein until I
I think
sat down and looked at it. Nick Spencer, yeah.
Yes,
Nick Spencer on Spider-Man.
Yeah, and then
Nick Spencer moving on to Thor. Yeah.
Oh, what? I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Who were you saying was on Thor? Donnie Cates is on.
Klein. Yeah, so Donnie is writing, and Nick Klein is the artist.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yes. Where is it right now?
I think he's really on break. I think his Prey was his last issue. Yeah, because of Bandini.
I don't even know where that is right now.
I think Veronica Bandini did the last issue. Something like that. No, I mean, it's like a lot of great stuff. I'm excited for the new Venom run too. I think Ron V and Ali Ewing are going to do an awesome job, and I love Brian Hitch.
I love that they flipped it.
Yeah, that, you know, but the planning of that is fantastic. I love it. Have you ever read The Authority?
No.
Okay, so Brian Hitch. Do you read the Ultimates?
Yep.
Okay, so Brian Hitch did the Ultimates, and so The Authority was like one of the first big comics that ever did like cinematic storytelling, like really wide.
Yeah.
Brian Hitch was like a big event, one of the first like participants in that movement, and him and Ellis created The Authority, which is basically the Justice League if they gave zero fucks and like wanted to protect humanity just at all costs. And it's my favorite superhero team because of how crazy the Brian Hitch is on like the scale of an artist is nuts. Yeah, I mean, Steve said Authority and Planetary are like two of the greatest stories I've ever read.
That's awesome. So getting back to villains, have you watched the second episode of What If yet?
I have not. I actually haven't watched What If yet. I've been crazy busy. I only finished Loki. I kind of want to save What If for me and my girlfriend. Because I threw her into the comic world when we started seeing each other, and I get to talk about like all the things I've grown up as a little kid, and I kind of want to save this like animated show for her because she likes the animation. So you know, I would be like, and this would be a really fun show to dive into. So I'm kind of saving it, but I'll wait. I'll wait on this question.
So I'm not gonna give anything away, but Thanos in the main timeline of the MCU was hands down a villain that you were able to connect with. I just was reading, she's still in Paris. He was a character that was like, okay, I can see why he's doing this. And in the second episode of What If, they obviously make a reference to that. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't want Thanos to win, but at the same time, you're so invested in finding out more about his story and why he truly wants to do this, that it makes you want to see where he got all this from. And I like that they dove back into his storyline with bits and pieces from his past. And I think it's upstairs right now, but I've been reading the Thanos novel, and that is phenomenal. Like
the Thanos Quest.
Yeah, the way that it like dives into different parts of his storyline.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Have you read Thanos Rising by, I think, Aaron and Simone Bianchi?
No, not yet.
That's like basically Thanos from a child to like his like 20s and 30s, or like whatever.
Okay.
Time, age, whatever it is. But like it's the story of like how he killed his mother and like made his father watch as he killed all of Titan.
Oh wow.
And Thanos is a bad dude. Dude that we convinced was like a good dude, because he literally is like evolutionary. No, Thanos is Apocalypse too. Like Apocalypse isn't a villain anymore, and I absolutely like love it. How it's like he was a villain, but he never really was a villain in the first place.
Yeah.
Same with Magneto. Magneto's never been a villain either.
For sure. And like it's so cool how, and I think Steve puts it perfectly, love those evil characters who don't see what they do as evil. Like Darkseid in the Snyderverse.
Well, he's living, breathing evil, so everything he does.
No, for sure. But like, you want to see what his true motives are. Like he's one of those characters that's so well developed that it's like, okay, there's got to be some reason that he doesn't see what he's doing as evil. He sees it as whatever he's truly seeing it as. And I think that's the Snyder cut I really wanted it to end with them losing. I wanted that to be the end of the movie. I wanted it to just stop there. And then from there, we could see, okay, where was this going to go? But I really wanted the Justice League to just fail. I wanted to see every little bit of that just be turned upside down. And I got to say, it was phenomenal. Like it was a wonderfully done movie. I like the way that they used the Flash to kind of go back in time and redo what was done. But at the same time, it's like, okay, what if we just stopped right there? Like that was the end of that movie. And part 2 was the ending of the Snyder cut of Justice League with more added on. Like that would have been such an interesting concept. So this isn't a question about comics, but is she still in Paris?
No, she's currently in Germany. Yeah. She's back home. She's back home for the moment.
Oh, so your girlfriend's from Germany?
Yeah, my girlfriend is European. Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Very interesting.
Thank you.
How'd you guys meet, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind at all. We met at school, actually. She was studying abroad and I was studying abroad. Okay. Is my second time over there. And I actually met her through my sibling's school. Wow. And I had to take a couple months to summon the courage to ask her out, and then I finally asked her out, and now I'm a fool in love, and I love it.
Hey, I was just at a wedding yesterday, where they had met. I think it was her freshman year and his sophomore year. He was her RA, and then I think it was their senior year. They met again, and they just started dating from there. So it all works out in the end. It will work out in the end, you know. And we're sitting at their wedding, and as she's about to say "I do," there's this giant clap of thunder, and it was just like poetic.
No, I mean, rain and thunder on a wedding day is good luck. So you know.
Yeah. It's got to be good luck when it happens right as you're saying "I do."
I would hope so. Yeah, I would definitely hope so. I mean, the French don't call un coup de feu for nothing.
Okay.
So that means a strike of lightning when you fall in love. So it's
very
like
cool.
Is like that bolt that strikes you when you're in love. So yeah.
So they must love the Flash over there.
You know they do. There's a lot. There's a lot of in the comic shops. It's the Trinity, and then there's Flash.
Wow, that's cool though.
Mhm.
So being overseas and seeing comics overseas, what was was there a different vibe around comics when you were in Paris, or is it
Well,
very similar to here?
more people read around the world, which
Okay.
is a lot nicer. People actually buy books over there. People read on the metro. People read as they're walking. People read at anything in cafes, and people take the time of day to actually go out and read and drink a coffee. So books there are huge. Bookstores are actually present everywhere. Comic shops are everywhere. Band desinées, which are like the French graphic editions, are huge. They're in print everywhere.
Wow.
Then you have this general like manga and comics are treated as actual literature. They are literature, and they should be considered literature. So
Yeah.
there's no stigma around it like the American comics community, and
Very
people
cool.
love pop culture there. So bookstores are abundant, comics are thriving, graphic novels are huge. Single issues aren't as big because people want the French, Germans, English. There's the French and like German and like Spanish editions of books. Like compile multiple volumes and they sell them at like half the price of an American book. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. I mean, I'm even working on a French fantasy book to be published at a French publisher. So there's the big opportunities over abroad, just as big as they are here, and for comics and everything.
Very cool. So one of the biggest questions that I always ask when I'm talking to a writer, an artist, if someone came to you from Marvel, DC, Image, any big publishing company, and was like, I want you to write this, what would you have no trouble saying no to? Like if they just said it flat out, this is what we want you to write, what would you want to write?
So I've been lucky enough to talk to Eric Stevenson at Image, and so I have a
Okay.
few that I'm currently working with to hopefully end up there. I have a lot of creator-owned projects that I definitely would fit at Image or any of the other companies that we wouldn't want to open up the door and talk. Aftershock, Boom, Black Mask, a bunch of other places. But if like DC came out to me, I definitely want to write a Black Label book. I already have a few in my head.
Okay.
I'd write. There's a Wildcat and Green Lantern Black Label book that I have in my head that are amazing. I love the premise, and it's something that we haven't seen before in either of the two universes. If Marvel came out to me, I love to write a Cap or Thor story.
Okay.
Uh, I have like a really strong sense of both those voices, both Thor and Cap. I think that's partially because of my father. He literally is like Thor. He's like Thor and Cap in one. I'd also love writing a chance of like Doctor Doom,
That'd be cool.
or any of the villains. Like if they gave me like a Thanos mini, I don't know. There are a lot of things I'd like to write, but I want to write my creator owned stuff. I will always take my creator owned over any work for hire job.
Oh, for sure. We were talking, Alex and I, on last Friday about Substack, and we had brought it up earlier in this interview, and how James Tynion was moving in that direction, just kind of taking a break from DC and saying Substack gave me a contract that I just couldn't refuse, and that it is a creator owned, like you own everything you do. It's not, at the end of the day, if they want to take this story and make a movie or a TV show out of it, you get like a piece of the pie. Like you own that project. That's your character, your story, and everything. And that's what's really drawn me to like wanting to do interviews with independent comic artists and writers, and just with this publishers, because you can see the amount of passion in a creator when they're talking about their craft, when they're talking about how to build a publishing company, how they started it. And it's not, oh yeah, Marvel picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, do you want to write this? It was, I had an idea in my head and I needed to get it off my chest. And that is such a cool dynamic to see, because there's so many stories out there that if someone just wanted to do it on their own, or just wanted to like do it through someone else, they would say no. And why are we saying no to these amazing creators? So I feel like we're in a new golden age of comics where we have so many independent artists and writers and letterers who are just ready to let everything fly and don't really care if it doesn't fit the normal style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's amazing.
The last thing we want is an editor wanting to tell us, this isn't your character. We have to do this instead of what you wanting to do. This affects what we're doing with other stories. We need you to change this part of your story. Things like that are just simple. They're like, well, okay, well, now I have to rework something here, and that affects the domino, the whole there. But, with all my creator-owned stuff, I'm very much like a gardener over an architect. So I like to build like the skeletons of a universe, and then I populate it with characters, and then I just end up writing the characters on the fly a lot of the time, especially my scripts. I love gardening scripts. I continue to revise them and go, but I jump in blank page and I start writing. And that's some of my best stuff has been the gardening stuff that I don't plan for. And it ends up always coming back at the end to like everything, no plot holes, everything works out. You're like, oh, cool. I meant it to be that way, but I didn't exactly plan it to end up exactly right, like this way. And, we can't have that control with work for hire stuff. So the creative owned indie world we're, like you said, a new golden age, and I love it. And I love how I can kind of say, well, I was on this game about a year ago. Thank you for everybody who's now joining up. No, but it's really great though that these really big personalities in comics that are really pushing this, we want you to be involved. We want to build a family with the process, we want to see how the creativity works. We want to involve, that's me on the opposite end. I want to get as many readers as I can to my publisher, but I also want to help grow these young artists to be the next generation. I want them to be the next Stormbreakers or the next the contract artists, and they're all different. They all have this amazing talent. They're all amazing to work with. I mean, the two young guys I just recently brought on, Charles and Isaac, they were gonna come on tonight, but unfortunately they couldn't make it because of just scheduling stuff. But those guys are like so talented just from their base that they have so much to grow on. And same with Dom. Like Dom's a little bit older than me, but he had just started comics with Adam and Attorney. Adam and Attorney was like his first big foray into like a storytelling world. And to see the evolution and just a hell of our own, and like him and I growing up together with my storytelling and then his art, it's one of those like awesome things that I love, and that's why I started Rogue in the first place. So,
and that's the best part about it, is being able to create that family of creators who are all working toward the same goal. And I mean, as a teacher, I am consistently trying to pull the best out of people, trying to see where I can push them and where I need to kind of like dive into it a little bit more and all of that.
Awesome. Yes. I applaud you. No, I'm actually studying to become an English professor. So like, I'm right in that boat with you, man. I love that. Love that. No, applaud. Like, hey, we need better teachers, and I can really sense you're a great teacher, man.
And it's one of those things where you really have to kind of know when to coach them, when to pull it out of them, when to push them. But yeah, it's amazing to be able to see people's strengths and, like you're saying, building a team that's also a family, and having Rogue Comics be kind of like that place for content creators who are just, they want to tell their own story. That's awesome. I mean, when I saw your stuff on Instagram, I was like, this is an amazing artist. This is an amazing creator. This is like, every little piece that I was scrolling through was something that I wanted to know more about. And I was so thankful that you sent me over so much. A lot of the times when I do these, it's like, oh yeah, here's like a bit of what we've been doing. I don't get like a full comic or anything to look at ahead of time. And one of the biggest reasons that I didn't look at everything is because I'm a lot like Tom Holland, where I'll just spoil it and I'll say something stupid. But it's so cool to like read those first 5 to 10 pages and be like, wow, I really like where this is going. So we've got one more question.
Yeah.
Is Fulton, where you do your prose stuff, affiliated with Rogue Comics?
No, Fulton is like a top 10 U.S. publisher, and they do primarily just literary prose, and they were the first house that, not the first house, they're actually one of like the later houses that I talked to when I was talking about publishing books, and have like this fantastic reach, really great company for prose, but I always wanted to keep my prose separate from my comics. The comic stuff is like my own world I get to play in, and then the prose stuff is stuff that I get to share with like the literary world, because there's like, you know, but it's two very different worlds, even though it's like the same world. It's like this weird dynamic that I have. I don't know, but they're two separate companies.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah,
prose is a different style in of itself.
yeah.
I should interview Tom Holland next so we can get the details on the future Spider-Man in the MCU. Trailer should be dropping in a little under 8 hours, Alex. That's what my sources are saying. You never know. Monday at 8 a.m. is what a lot of people have been saying lately. So let's hope for that. And if I can get an interview with Tom Holland, that would be amazing in of itself. But yeah. No, prose is a very cool style. And when I was doing my creative writing course, we spent like a whole week just on prose alone because it takes a lot to be able to do that. Go ahead.
No, it's you paint a picture with words, and
Yeah.
I like a lot of my prose stuff I could just throw into a comic script and then just break up and just more paragraphs than it's already broken up into, and that's my comic scripts. Like I write my comic scripts very prose like, with a lot of
Okay.
like a lot of poetic voice. Like I just wrote a 15-page short that I'm doing we're getting ready for our Rogue Comics Presents Volume 1. We're going to be doing a compendium of the 3 talent showcases we've done, plus 3 new stories with 3 new artists. And one of the scripts I wrote was like this beat poetry on top of a sci-fi story that was going on. So it's like these like new ways of like bringing the 2 different spheres into one and like mixing storytelling up, and it's things like that that I get to mix, because like my poetry book is like more of like a novella. It tells a story forward to front, 75 pages in total, but then you can also read it back to front or front to back. And there's like fun ways that you can play around with prose and comics, and the creating process in general is the best part.
Yeah. It's such a, like I said, I don't even know what to say, I guess is the best way to put it. It's
it's a lot.
It's
so simple.
Like you said, it paints a picture. It's so cool how when you read a prose, you're really seeing every little thing that's happening. And that was one of the hardest parts about writing a prose, was trying to paint that picture. And so we had to write a prose that actually took something that like was a second of time and then spread out to paint the picture of everything that happened in that like 1 to 10 second time frame. And it's crazy. It's such an interesting style, but when you got it, you got it.
yeah. I mean, it's you look at Neil Gaiman, right, and you read The Sandman, and then you read his prose stuff, and it's the same voice, the same man, just a little bit more words, and it's crazy how some of us artists are able to manage that. I love doing first-person prose books. Those are what my novels, my short stories, and my The Streets Fan Read and anthology are. This one I'm currently working on is a third-person narrative. Narrative voice is always super fun to use, like I was telling about for comics. And then, you know, inner monologues are fantastic. There's just so many great ways to tell a story, and it's all worth it.
100%. So I just pinned, for all of you still in the chat, roguecomics.com. That's where you can go to check all of this out. And then obviously, as we were talking about, everything else is Amazon. You can pick up a lot of these comics for a very good price. The artwork in them is phenomenal. If you want more information, you can message me on Instagram, or you can message Robby on Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's
Please.
just at Rogue Comics.
Yeah, it's at Rogue Comics, and then my personal Twitter and Instagram is the same. It's at Rogue Comics on both Twitter and Instagram, and then my personal is at ROBBY _, my last name DESHAIES _. So it's all the same across all the platforms. Super easy. My writing website is rjdeshaieswriting.com, and then our publishing website is roguecomics.com. Both have links to our Comixology page and then also our Amazon pages.
Very cool. And so you were talking a little bit about the logo that you created. Last question, I promise.
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep you too much longer.
No, don't worry. No, don't worry.
How'd you guys come up with this? I have to ask.
So Nick, the co-founder of the company, he and I were like, we had like a few names for like comic companies we play with. And then we like really hooked on Rogue, and I wanted to do the Rogue Comics where we stack the Rogue on top and then it'd be X on the bottom, and it was 5 letters and it all made sense. But then we're like, rogues, knives, it makes sense like for, the D&D storytelling. So we kept with that. So we went with the knife, and then we're like, we always love like hooded figures. We always love seeing like the shadow of the eye over, it's very much Batman. So we just kind of put those together, and we came up with this really rad logo, and it fits so well. And yeah, I love it.
It's so cool, and the way that it sits on a comic, it draws your eye to it without taking away from the cover. Like you know that it's there, like it's Rogue Comics, but it's one of those logos that captures you. It makes you want to know more about the company, more about everything that's kind of going on with who's writing this, who's drawing it. And I mean, this cover spoke to me. Right, I love it.
Yeah. So this book right here, so Tales of Your Destruction was this like book I came up with on like a winter day about just an anthology series of stories about the end of the world. And just various end of the world scenarios, and just like funky, weird. I wanted to be like mad, also sad and kind of crazy and whatever. And Tales of Your Destruction #1 is like this end of the world, like Pulp Fiction diner scene where like a crazy assassin cyborg tries to assassinate this two couple who've gone back together after like the 567th time. Just like crazy stuff. And this is a digital first, so it's going to be digital for the first 5 issues, and then we can compile it in like a volume 1 format in print. So yeah, it's really fun. And then my partner Jeff Hutchison he's really got this like really raw, edgy. He reminds me of like hard boiled, like just gut shot, like shotgun blast, like Alfred Hitchcock kind of thing. It's this really awesome mix I love, and Jeff's awesome. He's a really great partner to work with too. So Tales of Your Destruction, super fun.
Very cool. So with all that being said, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you and talking to you. I can't wait to talk again. Let me know when it's a good time, and we'll do like a month or 2 down the road and kind of get caught up and whatnot, and see where we're at then.
And we're gonna have some stuff coming up soon. Like I said, me and my new partners are working on a few things. We're going for some fall releases. #1 that is definitely going to be a definite is Rogue Comics Presents Volume 1. And then we have Will Pfeiffer the Graceless Ferret, which is our next 3-issue miniseries. That's going to be my first comedy book.
Very cool. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It was a pleasure, man. I look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you, everybody who came and watched. A pleasure talking to you and sharing your questions. I look forward to seeing you at signings. I try to do as many as possible, and I love talking with you all. So feel free to message me whenever.
Very cool. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.
Have a great night. Bye, guys.